Hello, this is Michael Willems with a quick tip for you today about standard headshots, the standard portrait. A quick, simple method to make a standard portrait that you can be proud of. This is me, and this is not a standard portrait. This is what 15-year-old girls do in washroom mirrors. A standard portrait is different. Standard portrait is made under studio conditions. And so the first thing you do is you set up your camera to handle studio conditions. And what that means mainly is you want the light in the studio, other than the flashes, to go away. You don't want the overhead light to do any work in the picture whatsoever. Only your studio light should show. So to do that you use a fast shutter speed, a small aperture, low ISO. So you go to 100 ISO, although when you're using speed lights you may need to go up to 400. You set the shutter speed to 125th of a second. If too much background light shows, you can go a little bit faster. And you set the aperture to f8. Then take a test shot, make sure that your auto ISO isn't on, for example, and the test shot should be very dark. There should be hardly any light visible. Test shot without flashes. So then a studio portrait looks like this. This is what you want to achieve. A standard good studio portrait. I took this one last week. You'll see good light, you'll see nice distribution of the light. It's not flat light, it's not even. The hair has shampooy goodness. There's a good catch light in the eyes at the 10 o'clock or 2 o'clock position. In this case 10 o'clock. The shadows are soft, so it's all good. How do you do this? Well, let's look at the lights. This standard type of portrait uses 4 lights. First, there's the key light. That's the main light, the key light we call it. And the key light is positioned 45 degrees up and 45 degrees to one side, usually. Of course, that's one way of doing a portrait. There are others, but for a standard portrait, 45 degrees up, 45 degrees to the right or left, with some kind of a modifier, an umbrella or a softbox to make it nice and soft. In this case, you see the square catch light. It's a softbox. And the key light you meter normally, and then you worry about the other lights. What other lights are there? Well, the fill light, because if I had only a key light, the other side of the face would be very dark. So on the other side of the face we use a fill light. You could use a reflector, but as you see the fill light's a little bit darker than the key light, right? And then we have that shampooy goodness, the hair light. Well, the fill light is also in front of the subject, but on the other side, the hair light is behind the subject, aiming towards the subject. So you need to make sure that light doesn't get into the camera directly. You use a snoot. And then finally the background. If we want a lit background so that it's all white, so that we can put it on a white background on a website, for instance, we use a background light. So those are the 4 lights you use. And this is what they look like. This is a typical setup in my studio where I have the key light. And the key light uses a softbox, so that gives you very nice soft light. It's directional enough, but it's very nice and soft. Soft meaning soft shadows, not sharp shadows. Then the fill light uses an umbrella. For the fill light I can use a reflected umbrella. I could shoot through, but then I throw light everywhere. I don't want to do that. And the hair light, or the rim light if you will, is a flash as well with a snoot. A snoot makes sure that the light only goes in a very narrow beam, and that means 2 things. It means I can avoid hitting the subject's shoulder with it, and I can avoid hitting the camera with it. And then in this case there is no background light, but if there was, it would be aimed straight at the background. It would be positioned somewhere on the side, aimed straight at the background. So I alluded to the key light being metered normally. What does that mean? That means you use a light meter, a flash meter in particular, and you make sure that if you set your camera to 100 ISO and f8, that you set your camera to 100 ISO, sorry, you set your meter to 100 ISO, 125th of a second, and you hold it exactly where the subject's head will be. And then you fire the flash, that one light, the key light, and you should read f8. That means metered normally, it means metered properly. The fill light you make 2 stops brighter, so it should read 2 stops darker, so it should read f4 on the flash meter. The hair light, you usually make it about the same as the key light. You can make it brighter, but usually you make it the same as the key light roughly, and then you finesse from there. And then finally the background light, well that depends. If you want the background to be a pure white, you go at least one stop over normal, maybe two stops, as bright as you like. Although if you make it too bright, you might get a little bit of artifacts around the subject's head, but you know, a couple of stops brighter than normal is not a bad thing. Because that way it's pure white, it's blown out, and that means you can easily replace it by any web background. Of course, you don't have to use a background light. Sometimes you don't, and you see the background. That's fine. If you want shadows, an artistic portrait, that's what you do. So there you have it, a simple way to create a nice looking portrait of handsome people like myself, the zombie here. And again here you see the same thing, key light, fill light, and a hair light or a rim light. And in this case no background light, so the background shows. That's it, that's how you do a standard portrait. Check me out every day on speedlighter.ca, a tip, a trick, something photography every day. Bye bye.